Hello everyone. A while ago I told you I got most of the extrays that are still available from Guerlain, and today I want to talk about Jicky from Guerlain in extray form. This is Jicky. I cannot help but to mention how beautiful this bottle looks like. This is a historic bottle as well. It's the quadrilobe or the quadrilobe bottle, which is, I guess, supposed to remind us of a champagne bottle. Why not? At least it reminds me of a champagne cork with this beautiful thing right here. This was very easy to unseal, and I think the final product looks a bit, it looks okay, maybe just a few a bit more rough around the edges with this thing I did here. But what's interesting and about this fragrance is definitely the smell, and that's an understatement. So I will apply this on a blotter and on the skin. Now I'm sure most of you will be familiar with Jicky by now. I mean, it has been around for quite some time. Oh, this is the first time I'm smelling something almost burned, like a burning smell in Jicky. It's never been here before. There are things that you can discover in fragrances when you smell them in different locations. Maybe I'm outside now. This is the first time I'm smelling Jicky in the open air, and this is quite, you know, it shows up different facets and different aspects. And I think this is true for other fragrances I've smelled in this setting as well. And there's also this, I don't know how to define this. It's a resinous, so it's burnt, that's true. It's also a resinous and very sharp note, and I have no idea where it's coming from, but it is something that I sometimes associate with the smell of oud, and I'm not saying there's oud in Jicky X-ray. But this is what I'm smelling. It's something quite dark, and it reminds me a bit of going to the dentist. So if anybody has any idea of what I'm smelling right now, do let me know, because I have no idea. But as I said, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Jicky. It's been around for more than a century. The original Jicky was, well, launched. It was created in the 19th century, which, again, wow. It's always an honor to me, for me to even talk about scents that are so filled with history. This was done in 1889, which is, you know, it's amazing in itself, the fact that we are still able to smell and to purchase Jicky even today, although it must needs be remarked that this is not the same fragrance. Let's be real about this. It's not the same fragrance as in the 19th century. Now, I was lucky enough to smell an older formulation of Jicky from the 90s, if I remember correctly, and I was gifted this sample by Dana Sandhu. I'm sure you know her from A Nose Knows. I say I was fortunate enough because I think there are many differences to today's formulation, in the sense that the older Jicky is a lot more multifaceted. It's a lot fuller, and it's a lot more resinous, which is very, very interesting, because today's Jicky Even the eau de parfum, I've never smelled the eau de toilette, which is a shame. It's quite a shame, and that isn't available anymore. It's not available for years now. But the current Jicky is more about lavender, and it's the lavender that I'm smelling right now, even in the X-ray. But it's not only the lavender, it's the Jicky footprint, which I think even in the vintage, I think it's something that is still present. The olfactory imprint that Jicky has, which consists of lavender and that contrast, because it is a contrast in Jicky. It's a beautiful contrast between vanilla and bergamot, which is something that you can smell in Shalimar as well. And it's not only that, because it's also the... So Jicky is never described as an ambery fragrance, and I think this is a bit wrong. I think you can say this about the X-ray. The X-ray is quite ambery because it's a lot more resinous than the eau de parfum, which is a lot fresher, as fresh as Jicky, and any fragrance that's not an eau de cologne from the 19th century or early 20th century can be fresh. I think the beauty of Jicky is this weird little thing that it does with this lavender, citrus, vanilla thing, and that very halitos, where whenever you hear people speaking about Jicky, they will bring the smell of, the halitos, the smell of spit, the smell of saliva that Jicky has. And this is because I have no other way of describing Jicky without using those terms, right? Because it's just a bit of a fecal smell that's just so Jicky. But apart from that, I think Jicky has this wonderfully elegant turn of the century. It definitely, when you smell Jicky, you can definitely tell that it's a fragrance that's not being done in this day and age, just because it smells so wildly different as a fresh scent, so wildly different than anything we are accustomed to smelling and by today's standards. And if I were to liken it to something that's a bit more modern but still not at all modern, it would be, well, modern in the sense of contemporary, because Jicky is a very modern scent. It would be Rudnicka's Eau d'Hermès, without a doubt. I think there's something there that those fragrances share, but again, I'm not sure how to define it, how to define that sense of smelling vintage, because the fragrances are not identical, not at all. But it's just the fact that it's the use of maybe animalics, it's the use of unapologetic human smells, which is something I truly adore and I look for in fragrances. I think I said this many times. And there it is, that lavender that's just so woody and so French. I don't know what it is with lavender and the French people, but it's just that idea of, and it does smell dusty, and it does smell like an old cupboard. And also, because it's the X-ray, it's the first time I'm able to smell aldehydes in Jicky, because this Jicky is aldehydic. This Jicky is, as I said, it's more complex. It's a bit more multifaceted than the eau de parfum. It's a bit heavier, it's a bit fuller. For the first time that I smell maybe the idea of a chypre fragrance, of an incipient, it's the inception of a chypre fragrance that I smell here in the Jicky extrait. And it's crazy, I know, because there's next to nothing that would kind of warrant this description of Jicky. But there you go, it's there. It's more aldehydic, and it has this beautiful contrast between the bergamot and the resins. I think it's the lavender that borrows that woody, dusty feel with no traces of oak moss, and nothing very mushroomy about this fragrance that you may, or earthy for that matter, that you might find in other chypres, right? But there is definitely something there, and for me this is again a very, very elegant smell. Now, a variant, a twist of this Jicky you can find in Mouchoir de Monsieur, which is a scent that I just adore, with the addition of violet powdery notes and woody iris, and just about the heavier tonka coumarin that you might find in L'Heure Bleue, for instance, because Mouchoir de Monsieur is, I think it was done in 1909, but I might be wrong. I have to search for that information. But it's that turn of the century note. But they are not dissimilar, and I think Mouchoir de Monsieur and Jicky are sister fragrances, or they are definitely related more or less, because it's that lavender, classy, very clean, very dandy smell. And Jicky was, because about gender in fragrances, Jicky was always worn by men. I have no idea if this was, because history, fragrance history, it does tend to be a bit fuzzy. We don't know who this was launched for. We don't know the inspiration. We don't know who Jicky truly was. We have no idea. Some people say it's, oh my god, it's an uncle. Yeah, it's an uncle, because this was done by Aime Guerlain. Is it Aime Guerlain's uncle? Is it Aime Guerlain himself? Who cares? We have no idea who Jicky was. Is it that mysterious English girl who stole his heart? Who cares? It's just so strange, and I don't think it's important at all. But there is a bit of a mystery behind this strange naming, Jicky. What is that? It's a very unusual name. What does that even mean? Is it short for Jacques? Is it short for Jacques Guerlain? Is it Aime was calling his nephew Jicky? Nobody knows. Nobody knows, and I think it will stay like this. We'll never find that out, and I don't think it's important at all. What's important is how beautiful this fragrance is, the beautiful presentation that it has, this wonderful bottle. I cannot get enough. This is the bottle interpretation that we get with Mon Guerlain. It's the same idea of quadrilobe bottle. I think this was done by Raymond Guerlain. As I said, it's a piece of history, and the extrait, it's like smelling the just a bit more alive version, a bit more closer to the heart of the fragrance, and it's not at all closer to the vintage fragrance or the way this fragrance was. I'm not going to tell you bullshit like that, like this smells closer to the vintage, because it doesn't. It's the current formulation. This is a current bottle. This is from 2022. Yes, it's a 2022 bottle, if that helps. So it's fairly recent. It's the current formulation. Nobody cares. It's a wonder that we can still smell these fragrances today. I don't know if either of you people go for Jicky when it comes to fresh scents. I definitely go for Jicky sometimes. I go for Mouchoir de Monsieur. I go for Eau d'Hermès sometimes. And yeah, who knows? Who knows about the future? It's a shame about the extrays that the original bottles for now are not available on the Guerlain website. You can still buy them in the Aime bottles, in the B bottles, which is not that nice in my opinion, and they are a lot more expensive, which is again such a shame. The way things are going at Guerlain and even at Chanel with their discontinuation of historic fragrances like Cristal, you never know. So yeah, you just never know what's going to happen with these beautiful scents. But if they discontinue Jicky, which is such a part of their history, it's going to be very audacious of them. Now, another thing I want to say about Jicky is the closeness that it has, this relationship that it has to Shalimar. And I don't want to talk about that legend where, you know, it was Jacques Guerlain that was experimenting with Jicky, and he by mistake he put some overdose of vanillin into Jicky, and there he created Shalimar. This is not how Shalimar got created, or at least Occam's razor, people. I don't think this is a true story at all, but definitely you can tell that Shalimar and to some extension Habit Rouge were created from Jicky, using the same idea of fragrance relationships that you can find, and you do find, at Guerlain. And I'm talking about the relationship that you can find between Après l'Ondée and L'Heure Bleue. I'm talking about the and to the extent of Insolence and so forth. Guerlain do this many times, where many of their fragrances have these relationships between themselves, and it's not merely the Guerlinade I'm speaking about this. I'm speaking about here, but it's that same imprint, olfactive imprint that I spoke about earlier, that you can smell in Shalimar. And it's interesting that it's including, because when I smell this, my mind instantly goes to Shalimar, and I can swear there are traces of leather in this, and I can swear that that sharp note from the beginning that's still present here, I can swear that I can smell it in Shalimar as well. And it has to be some sort of resin. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely there. And to some extent you can find that in Habit Rouge Eau de Parfum. And on the skin, this is just, it's the ancestor of Shalimar, period. If you have any other questions, do let me know in the comments below. If you are curious to know anything else about Jicky, do let me know. Do let me know about your relationship with Jicky and other fragrances that have this touch of the vintage about them. And that's it. Until next time, remember, fragrance creates memories, and may yours be happy.